Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. We spend a lot of time talking about exercises and muscle movement. And this week on Instagram, I started to talk about something a little bit different about movement patterns. And I've been trying to talk about this more over the last few weeks. Today, I want to talk about one simple movement, not anymore, and what the movement pattern extension really is. It's more hurts with extension and breaking down the movement pattern of back extension. So let's dive in a little bit. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you are enjoying these series of exercise or these series of movement patterns and starting to learn a little bit more about why it's important to not just look at one body part, but instead to look at a movement pattern as we are looking at athletes and how they're moving. This particular case that I shared on Instagram, I have a client who has pain when she handsprings and low back pain when she handsprings. And she's a gymnast, and she wasn't really sure, was it happening as she went backwards? Was it happening when she hit her hands? Or was it happening as she hit her landing? And it kind of has varied all over the place. And so we've broken down her movement the last couple of visits and really looked to see some of it's coming from her hip extensors, and she doesn't push her hips forward enough. Some of it's coming from tipping her head way backwards to lead and land, which you want your athletes to be able to look backwards and see where their hands are going, but not leading so much with their neck. I didn't see any hinging at her lower back, which is one really crucial piece, because when we look at somebody that has pain with extending, we might think they might have a spondylolisthesis. And this is something that we may want to modify on how they're doing it. But she doesn't hinge from her back. She doesn't have sharp pain right in the middle. It varies and it spreads out. And from her lower back, the pain is presenting in her lower back, but there's other areas in her body that are contributing to that. So when you see somebody bend backwards, I want to know, what are you watching for? Most people will answer me, they're going to look at that lower back. They're going to look at that hinge. And what does the lumbar spine, that low back area, really do? Do they have pain? And are they flexible? They always advice, like, my athlete wants to do something better, I need more flexibility. Or my athlete has pain when they're doing X, Y, and Z and leaning backwards. What do we need to do to stop that pain? Movement professionals also need to look at what's happening at other areas. The pain is a symptom, and that's presenting in an area that is talking and something's going on. But if you're a movement professional, and this coach, personal trainer, physical therapist, and mom of a cheerleader who is directing your cheerleaders' mobility and care, let's start to look at what's happening at the ankles, the hips, the knees, the rib cage, and the upper back, the thoracic spine. What happens at the pelvis, the neck? Are they actually able to do this without, while breathing and not holding their breath? Or do they hold their breath? What does their balance look like as they weight shift backwards? Are they losing it? And do they actually get that weight shift motion? When we look at back extension, we're going to look at a whole body movement pattern. It's not just one area in the body that's moving. And we need to recognize that way up to the head that could be contributing to some of that back pain. So we want to make sure that we are training movements, not training muscles. And we are really focusing on the movement patterns, not just identifying lower back muscles. So let's stretch out the lower back muscles so things don't hurt. What happens when somebody compensates? I've changed how I looked at things through the years, because believe me, when I first started coaching and when I was first a physical therapist, I was just looking at basic movements. They lean backwards. Instead, now I'm asking, where are they extending? What is happening? Are they able to shift their hips forward and move their hips forward so that they actually get hip extension along with back extension? If you can't extend through your hips, your lumbar spine is going to do more of the work, and you might end up pivoting in that lumbar spine. That could potentially create some pain in the back because it doesn't want to move that much. Another example might be if they don't have rib cage and thoracic extension, and they can't lift and lean back and reach backwards. So when I look at extension, I'm raising my arms overhead and seeing, do they have full flexion in their arms? And at the same time, can they get that mobility to the thoracic spine? Am I also looking at, how does their neck move and what is their neck? I just saw somebody today in the clinic raise your arms up and lean backwards. And the first thing she does, arms are up overhead. You see, mine don't go very far. And she tips her head back and then leans back. This might tell me she might have neck pain with that, might cause headaches, but it also, the neck extensors are a common compensator for the lower back extensors. And so we may find that we need to work on her neck to get her lower back stronger. One thing I found with my client is limited ankle motion. She was having trouble setting and getting into the set position because she couldn't bend her knees and she bent her ankles. So we needed to get her ankles to move a little better so that as she get into her hips, and then she had the ability to spring backwards and change the angle of how everything was shifting to go into the handspring. The pain in the back might create a change in the strategy, or limitation in the ankles and the hips and the upper back might create a compensation in the back. And we have to we want to make sure as our cheerleaders move, or looking at our clients move and our adults, that it moves as a whole. And we need to stop just chasing where the pain is. This is why on Instagram, I shared what happened in my client's movement patterns. We've talked already about her foot and her knee and needing to gain range of motion in her ankle, stretching out her soleus and her gastroc before she goes and sets. In addition to that, she had to strengthen her through her handspring. And that helped a lot, and she didn't have any pain in the set anymore. She came back the next time, and she was actually having pain as she was going over and really getting into extension. And this time we found that her neck muscles were overworking for her lower back. She was leading with her head to try and get the movement instead of springing with the hips, extending and rounding. You want to see almost like a C curve, a long rainbow. If you're a cheer coach, you coach your athletes to go long. But if you cut it short, even just a little bit, and you're leading with the head, that's going to end up pivoting at that lower back. So she was doing that. Her neck extensors were compensating for her low back muscles. So one correction we made there was stretch out her neck muscles. I did some massage with her and then taught her an exercise where she was bracing on her elbows and creating motion through her neck, bringing her chin to her chest and trying to stretch those muscles out while maintaining her shoulders out of her ears and actually starting to engage the lower back muscles in just a prone prop position. That helped a little bit. Then we realized her lats were working also. And as your arms go up and over, and they need to eccentrically load into the lats, they stabilize a lot as you're hitting your hands to the floor. So shoulder flexion was restricted. The lats were tight, but that was because her upper traps were overworking for her lats. So we taught her an upper trap stretch, got her to loosen those up, get those lats engaged by just getting and doing some hanging so she could go and hang on a bar. The reason I went and found this, or that we found this together, and she told me when she had done her handspring, she had just done a lot of bar work. So her lats were over fatigued because she was compensating with her upper traps and really shrugging as she tried to do the bar work. There was a compensation there. And then as she started to go, her back fatigued and it took all the brunt of it. So her homework is to stretch out her neck, to stretch to prone prop and get her stability into that elbows position. And then to do some upper trap stretching and do some hanging on a bar to engage her lats, where she's just letting them hang and hold overhead. That will eccentrically work. And she also still has to do some calf stretching and some single leg pistol squats just to get her warmed up to be ready to go and get on the beam. Now, general clients aren't going to go and hang all the time. They may upper trap stretch, and maybe they do a lat pullover, or maybe they do a straight arm lat pull down. There's a variety of exercises you can do to correct that, to get those movement patterns, that shoulder extension and that range of motion to improve. Key here is making sure that we're looking at improving the ankle mobility, to change the quad stability, to allow the hips to extend. When our quads are firing correctly, we're going to get a better through our pelvis, and then that allows less pivot point at the lower lumbar spine and more through the hips and the pelvis. And get her neck to work so that she's not having to hyperextend her neck and she can actually move through that motion. Sometimes we have to look at breathing. This particular client, we focused on that in the beginning. So with her, I might say, on the elbows, are you holding your breath? Can you actually exhale? And are you using your breath to help stabilize? You should use your breath to help stabilize. If you're an old cheerleader like me, you probably didn't do a whole lot of breathing when you were either on the sidelines or running through your jumps or running through your team and building stunts. You come down, you're like, we need to train for that. We train for that in the exercises, and we just make sure that rib cage expansion, which will allow them to lean backwards. As we breathe in, those ribs will expand, and that can allow us to get back. And as we breathe out, your lumbar muscles and your core muscles contract, and they all help to stabilize at the same time. So if you're holding your breath and you're just using your diaphragm to stabilize, you can't get that motion. Everything kind of clamps down. So changing one mobility, loosening up the upper back or loosening up the ankles can change everything up and down the chain. And how do you know? You've got to be able to look at them move. So what should you actually watch for? This is crucial time, right? Watching where do they actually move as they're leaning back. Questions you can ask, because maybe you don't know the exact ranges of motion that we should have. That's completely fine. You're going to look and see, are they moving smoothly? Where does the movement start? Does it start from the hips or does it start from their neck? Does one side move beyond the other? For me, if you looked at me, you'll see one arm comes up farther. So am I leaning more with that? Just noting, is it equal? Are the hips contributing? Are they moving first? Does the lower rib cage, or can they maintain that stack as they're leaning through the upper back? Does the pelvis move forward? And that goes along with the hips. Are they holding their breath? Do they lose their balance? Are they returning to neutral? So we are looking at how they go backwards, but we're also looking for how they come back up and if they're struggling and wiggling to get there. These are all things to look at how they're moving. You're not diagnosing, you are just observing and it look like. And so as you watch your athletes and you watch your clients this week and your kids this week, just observe, is it smooth and does it flow? Because a nice back extension that doesn't create limitation, doesn't create pain, the hips are going to move forward, the knees are going to stay straight, they're not having to bend, the ankles, you weight shift forward a little bit, your arms should be up by your ears. And why does this matter for everyone? Why do you have to pay attention to? So for cheerleaders, and if you're a cheer mom or a cheer coach, you want to look at a back or a handspringing, you need to have that nice curve through they need good, solid hip tumbling. You want to make sure that landing on their jumps, if they're really hyperextending through their back as they're jumping to get into their prep, they may be putting more compression because they're not lifting and using their core and getting their hips engaged. In stunting, you might see it in bases. They're tending to hyperextend and really underneath the stunt, and they kind of have that hyper arch booty sticks way out. That's creating a lot of compression there. They may not be able to actually control that rib cage and the hips to be able to get underneath the stunt. For adults, so if you're watching this and you're just going to check for yourself because maybe you have some back pain and you're not sure if motion is limited, or maybe you don't have pain and you're just feeling stiff. I don't have ongoing regular back pain, but my upper back is pretty stiff in the morning. So I need to know, like, how does it feel when I'm standing up from a chair? And does my spine stay up or am I leaning forward? And when I come up out of standing, when I come up out of sitting, do my hips fully extend? When I reach overhead into a cabinet, am I trying to pivot for my back because I don't have that shoulder motion, or is my shoulder limited and I'm trying to, because I may happen with gardening, reaching overhead and trimming trees. If you're really arching your back to get something, I did this. I don't do a lot of yard work, but I'm trying to prune my trees. And I had to reach and cut my lilac tree, which is way above my head. And I couldn't quite reach it from the ground. So I needed to pull a branch down and I was leaning backwards with the clippers. My back didn't like that because I was having to hinge from my lower back and not moving my hips enough and not being able to get my shoulders overhead. And then my neck was getting involved because I'm looking up also. So maybe that's happened to you. Maybe you are having to compensate from lack of shoulder mobility, lack of rib cage mobility, and lack of hip mobility to do something overhead or picking up something from the ground and not coming up smoothly. If your coach is teaching exercises, you absolutely need to learn how to watch somebody move. It's going to help you prescribe your exercise that you're going to give them. I wouldn't have thought to give this person had pain with leaning backwards. So why am I going to have her do an extension exercise? We need to stretch her neck and then do the stability. It didn't hurt her back when she did it. And when she finished, she was able to lean backwards with much better hip extension and no back pain. It's going to help on your programming. You're not going to load somebody super heavy if they can't extend their back. You're not going to put them in a back squat and try and get more back extension, but maybe you do a front squat instead. You might have to regress somebody if these exercises that she's doing are more supplemental. They're going to be exercises, and they'll be her in between when she's waiting for an event. She can do these exercises in between. She couldn't start with just hanging. We had to start on the ground and doing a pullover and working some get-ups so that she could groove that motion. This was prior to this current week's treatment or last week's treatment. So she might have to regress a little bit and work on rolling to create that stability sequencing that they do. Or can lean backwards. We can push her to do more and actually get into doing some pull-ups. She can actually do 2 strict hang pull-ups. She probably could have done more before I really made her engage her core and get her upper traps not to work. But we just shut her down at the level she was able to do instead of trying to force those dead hang pull-ups and really get into the back. If you're a physical therapist, find the true driver instead of just treating the symptoms. We need to look at the whole body. I know that we're taught not to look at the whole body, we're not able to treat the whole body, but we are, because if we look at how we're moving and we find that ankle mobility is actually creating the back pain, aren't we treating the back pain and making ankle mobility better at the same time? So just extension, right? I'm going to keep talking about different movement patterns as the weeks go on, but I'm hoping that you start to look at movement differently. One thing you can start asking is, how is somebody moving? Maybe look at the whole body and look at movement pattern goes. Stop looking at just one muscle to work on that, and everything will start to change. So I'm going to continue this series and break down different movement patterns individually. We're going to look down the road at flexion, rotation, squatting, single leg stance we've done a little bit on already, maybe some balance, and not just how to perform them, but what they're actually telling us. So if there's a movement pattern or there's something that you want me to break down first, please send me a message. If you want to learn more, I have a movement tracker that you can get for free, and I'll leave that in the show notes below. Start to explore it. Watch somebody walking down the street. Watch how somebody stands up. Don't just be confined. The more people you look at and the more you see, like, where are they struggling, the bigger your eyes are going to get, and you'll start looking at the whole body versus just looking at the spot of pain or the spot of compensation. Have a great week. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day.